Force police, stating they better be strong because he was going to fight and don't dispatch female officers. The officer arrived on scene and immediately noticed the defendant coming out of his house in an aggressive manner. The defendant took off his shirt and hat and was coming towards the officer quickly and was trying to get the officer to physically fight him. The defendant repeatedly stated he wanted the officer to fight him, and the officers immediately drew their tasers and began giving the defendant verbal commands. The defendant repeatedly refused to comply with the verbal commands and continued telling the officer and his partner to put their tasers away so they could fight him. The officer took the defendant to the ground by tackling him and used force to put the defendant's hands behind his back. The defendant was physically resisting and yelling the entire time. The officer then got the defendant into handcuffs and moved him to the side of the patrol vehicle. The officer's partner held the defendant against the vehicle while the officer conducted a search. The defendant was still refusing to comply with verbal commands and was physically resisting. The officer then assisted the defendant into the patrol vehicle using the minimal amount of force necessary, and the defendant was kicking the officer's legs and still refusing to comply.
I think that it's so difficult to be a police officer nowadays. You know,
I understand.
a fine line that you have to walk between because of social media,
Sure.
because of cameras, because of just the way that the public policy and people come down on officers and how they react to situations and how they can get in trouble themselves. That if you see a person who's not acting normal, they're having like a mental health episode. How do you quell that down? Do you tase them? Because we know that we've got situations where officers go rogue and they just start kill them.
No, well, we've seen it too many times. And
it's really, and it sucks. It's sad, but.
And I'm not criticizing the officers one bit about that. If it's the case that he tells them, when you get here, I want to fight. And when they get there, he says, I want to fight. And put your tasers up and fight me. And they put their tasers up and decide to go hands-on with him. I respect them for having done it.
I would like to know, because I'm not prepared to roll on this. What I would like to know is, what is the policy of the department when you have a person who's having a mental health episode? How do you handle that? Do you arrest them?